From 12 News, this is Newsmakers.
Last week, two regional banks, Silicon Valley and Signature Banks, collapsed, giving the financial markets and depositors at other regional and community banks across the country the jitters. The ripple effects were felt in Rhode Island and the state employee pension system. This week on Newsmakers, the outlook on the state retirement plan, the regional banking community, and more with our guest, Rhode Island General Treasurer James Diossa. Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White, alongside 12 News Politics editor Ted Nisi, General Treasurer James Diossa. Thanks for coming in, and happy St. Patrick's Day. We're taping this on a Friday.
Yes.
Yep. We're wearing
plenty of green around the table.
That's right.
But
no PC.
Yes, we'll find. Most people will know the outcome of that game who are watching this at home on Sunday. All right, I want to dive right into the banking crisis. Silicon Valley, Signature Bank collapsed, as I said in the open. At the time, I reached out to your office and your spokesperson. It was estimated the state pension fund would take about a $2.5 million hit. We should point out it's a very small percentage of the overall $10.3 billion pension plan. But that figure also included two other banks that were sort of in peril, including First Republic. Looks like First Republic has been given life support. Do you know what the figure is now? It was $2.5 million earlier this week. It is?
It's still in that range. We're continuing to make the assessments. Again, every single day there's new news coming out about all these different banks. But I will give kudos to my team. You know, when the news broke about SVB, they informed me, kept me up to date. We had meetings over the weekend. We released to you the total exposure. I think you did a great job explaining the impact on our fund. And like I said, it's only on our $10 billion fund, 0.03% of an impact. So again, for the retiree, I don't think they like to see this type of news. I sympathize with them, especially with inflation being very high at the moment. But I think that the team is doing a great job of ensuring that we continue getting the utmost updated information, but also preparing if any new news comes out.
So the transition in the Treasurer's office from Seth Magaziner to you has come at quite a time of turmoil in financial markets, obviously the banking situation, the fast rise in the interest rates, et cetera. I'm just curious, big picture, as you've settled into the job, had conversations, are you and your team feeling that you need to make any, you said during the campaign you liked how Treasurer Magaziner was managing the money, you felt that was a good approach. Do you still feel that way, or do you think any big moves need to be made because of what's going on in the world?
Correct. The market's very different from a year ago, and so one of the things that I directed my chief investment officer and informed the State Investment Commission was that I wanted to do an asset liability study so that we could see if we're investing appropriately and weighted correctly. And so we should have something done by the end of this summer, hopefully, where we will look at the picture as a whole and hopefully see if there's a need to recalibrate our investments.
I looked this morning, and I actually was a little surprised in a positive way, I suppose, that the pension fund has not, because your office reports monthly on their website, you can look up where things stand. The high was $10.8 billion back in 2021. It still stayed around $10 billion, looks like, bouncing on either side of that, despite how much turmoil we've seen in the markets. What exactly is driving that that's allowed the pension fund not to have a deeper cut?
I think that it's just diversity of the funds, investing in different areas of the market. I think that what's allowed us is, we have this inflation pool of funds that look at assets that bounce against inflation and stuff like that. So we've done a good job. That's why I said, during the campaign, I think that the outgoing treasurer's strategy was a good one. Now I'm looking at it from a point of view from a year out. The markets have changed a lot. That's why I asked the State Investment Commission and our chief investment team to look at recalibrating our investments if needed.
In this context, on Wednesday, all eyes are going to be on the Fed. They're going to meet again, and then their continued effort to tamp down on inflation. A lot of people are expecting them to raise interest rates again, though we'll see. They might have a different outlook because of this banking crisis. But look, if they do, is it time to re-examine state and local bonding? Should Rhode Island and its communities pull back on borrowing?
That's a conversation that's ongoing. And actually, I know it's Friday, and this afternoon I'm having a meeting around that topic. Again, we still have to wait. We don't know what's going to happen in our next meeting. I think what's most reassuring to the people of Rhode Island is that our financial institutions in Rhode Island are sound. We made those calls out to them because they.
I had a question about that because one of the ripple effects is, banks like Bank of America are seeing an influx of depositors,
Correct.
which suggests depositors are pulling out of regional and community banks. So what you're saying, it sounds like you touched base with the banks.
Our team has reached out, and again, we're not afraid. We are ensuring that there's no contagion happening because of SVB, and we've gotten strong signs from all of our financial institutions. And so I think that's an important message to all Rhode Islanders that we're in a good place.
Does the state have something I hadn't thought really hard about before because unfortunately I don't have over $250,000 in the bank to worry about the FDIC limits, but that companies, and I would presume governments too, can have deposits in the bank far higher than $250,000. Does the state have significant uninsured deposits in some of these medium-sized banks?
And just so we point out, you say the limit of $250, that's what the insurance limit is. If you have more than $250,000, which we do not, that would not be insured or guaranteed if something went wrong.
So all of our, let's say, cash is collateralized, and so we're insured with these different institutions that if we're going to put our money there, that they have to collateralize that dollars. So that makes it even more safe, and it has to be collateralized at 102%. So we're almost sure that we're in safe hands.
I want to shift gears to the pension. You proposed a bill that lawmakers are going to be debating that would provide a one-time stipend of $500 for state retirees. Their cost of living adjustments, as they well know, or COLAs, have been frozen since pension reform more than a decade ago. Was there discussion in your office about providing a COLA instead of a one-time stipend?
So I think that the reason why we moved in this direction, and it's been a topic that I've discussed during the campaign, is that, look, we did have a few years of a strong market. Right now, things are a little different. I think that we have to ensure that our trust that holds the $10 billion is strong. We're only 60% funded. It looks like by year 2031, we'll be at about 80% funded. And so this is the goal that I want to hit, because I think that the stronger the fund is, the better returns we'll have.
Is this money coming from the trust, or is it coming from somewhere else?
So this will come out of the general fund.
Okay.
So this will not impact the fund.
What's the tab? What's the tab on it?
It's about $15 million. All
right.
And so I've been very clear with everyone that asks, is that I think that we have to stay the course, and our advisors have said we're doing a good job. We have to stay the course, and so I want to get to a position where the fund is strong, and then the COLAs will resume. But in the meantime, I sympathize with the people who haven't had a COLA. Inflation is high. People are struggling. And so this one-time stipend will hopefully provide some relief to these families.
I have to plead ignorance on something. I actually don't know the answer to this. Did the governor put $15 million in his budget for the stipend?
No, we're going to the General Assembly.
So he didn't, but because the governor said in the campaign trail too he wanted to do something like this, but it's not in his budget right now.
It's been in discussions, and he's aware.
And Speaker Shekarchi's expressed concern about already that the governor's budget plan is probably in the red because revenue's falling because of the economic situation. Have you gotten any indications from leadership that this can still be prioritized even if other things are getting cut?
We've had conversations with leadership. We're going to get the appropriate hearings on these bills. I think that there is support. I'm pleased that people are aware that we should not be touching the fund so that we can continue growing it so that it's stronger and better position in the future for our pensioners.
You want to expand your office's victim compensation fund that provides money for burial expenses if someone dies in a crime, cost of a crime scene cleanup, relocation expenses, so on and so forth. You want to add a $2 fine for fine to traffic violations for the fund to raise more money, which sort of begs the question: does the fund run out of money? Are you falling short in meeting the goals, and that's why you need to raise more money?
The fund is always falling short, and the good thing is the money that you bring in, it's matched 70% by the federal government, and so the more funding we can get, the higher we'll get in return from the federal government. And this is an unfortunate fund that you
don't want to use.
Exactly.
You don't want to use it.
You don't want to use it, but there's a lot of situations where burial costs, relocation costs, healthcare costs. This fund covers. And
you said crime. So, like, if unfortunately if someone's home is a crime scene, the cost of cleaning up what happened.
And I
actually didn't know that.
In a situation of rape, which is what we're looking to modify as well, is instead of going to the police, they can go to any of the healthcare institutions and get an assessment there, and they can use that as a report to be able to qualify for some of these funds. But we want to promote it more, because I think there's a lot of people that might not know about the program, but there's not a lot of resources in this fund, and so we're looking to grow it and be able to help people in Rhode Island.
I wanted to ask you about Rhode Island Housing. You're on the board of Rhode Island Housing. The treasurer always serves on the board. There's been some criticism from Speaker Shikarchi and others at the State House about how slow they feel the agency has been to spend that big $250 million in ARPA money for housing that was put forward. Now, I know not all of that, in fairness, is at Rhode Island Housing, but a lot of it is. Has the board been briefed? Are you concerned about the speed with which the agency is getting that money actually out into the world?
So I think I have several meetings with the leadership at Rhode Island Housing. They're assuring that they're working every single day to get this money out. They fully understand the need, especially where the rents are getting higher, people are being pushed out. The cost of construction is getting higher, and so, I'm fortunate to be part of this board, and I look forward to sharing my experience in my time as mayor and the key importance of housing, and be able to continue moving this on a fast track.
We only have about a minute left. I do have to ask about your better half.
Knew this was coming.
State Senator Sandra Cano, who is one of the people seriously considering a run for the 1st Congressional District. I assume you would get in trouble at home if you announced her decision for her on the Newsmakers. But, you guys must be talking about this. How close is she to making a decision? And what do you think she should do?
She's very interested. Very interested. She's just making her own assessments on, what's the best thing for her. I think that, what I've said from the beginning is I think we need to send a woman to Congress, and I think she'd be an excellent candidate if she decides to run.
When is she going to make the decision? Do you have a sense?
I think in the coming weeks.
You two have a 2-month-old baby, along with, I think, a 3-year-old?
3-year-old. Yeah.
And I saw people saying, oh, well, how's she going to take care of the baby? And then other people saying, well, wait a minute, why is the mother being asked that? Because you ran last year knowing you were going to have a baby. Did you get that question last year?
I did not get that question.
So you feel like she's getting a question you didn't, even though it's the same couple?
Exactly. But we have a very tight-knit family, which is incredible. I think that's why we've been able to do what we do in public service. Our family is very, very supportive, and that's very encouraging.
General Treasurer James Diossa, thanks for joining us on Newsmakers.
Thank you. Happy St. Patty's Day.
Happy St. Patrick's Day. And when we come back, a look at the week's top stories, including a Target 12 investigation into the Providence public schools with a political roundtable, or rather a reporters roundtable. We'll see you next on Newsmakers.
Right now, the system is failing kids. And I think we can look in many different ways that they have been failed throughout, from birth all the way up to this moment where we don't have preschool classrooms open for our kids with special needs. We need to get on this now. We cannot wait. Kids are waiting for us. They're looking for the adults to help them. And this is what we need to do.
Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. That was Paige Clausius Parks from Rhode Island Kids Count. She was reacting to a Target 12 investigation, and joining me on set are two of the investigative reporters that worked on that, Eli Sherman and Steph Machado. Thanks for joining us on the program, as always. In sum, you uncovered at least 34 special needs students in Providence have gone for months without receiving the educational support required by law. The Education Commissioner, in an interview with you, Steph, blamed it on staffing shortages. Before we get to the strong reaction that this reporting elicited, Eli, how did it come about?
Yeah, so we started hearing from sources at the end of last month, just sort of whispers that there were some young children possibly with special needs that were not getting education in the Providence school system. And actually, there were just a couple of them, thought, okay, maybe there's something here. But because of a lot of reporting that actually Ted and I have done over the last few years on problems with early intervention, which is a 0 to 3 age group, of there being staffing crises there, it sort of rung true that there might be this issue. So at that point, Steph and I started reaching out to some families and ended up uncovering that there were dozens of children between the ages of 3 and 5 with special needs who were not getting the education that is required by law, as you mentioned. And I think, a really good way of thinking of this is that if you have a child in kindergarten, you bring them to school on the first day of school and they go into school. For children with special needs between the ages of 3 and 5, it's the same deal. So them not getting education is like a parent getting turned away with a kindergartner on day 1.
And one of those kids we just had on the screen there, that was young Juju, that you interviewed the mother of Juju. Just first of all, just for the people at home who saw your story, do you have an update on young Juju and that situation?
We'll say first, his situation is that he's nonverbal. His mom is very concerned about his developmental delays. He's 3.5 now, and she's been trying to get him in to get special ed services since he was 2 years old, first in early intervention, and then now with the Providence Public School District, because your services with your home district start when you turn 3, and so has been waiting months to get him in. After our story aired, she did get a phone call from PPSD that they were informed that there was a spot open at a private special ed pre-K in Cranston. So we are, as we tape this, waiting to hear from Junie Fed, the mom, if that Cranston school, they have to evaluate Juju to see if they can meet his needs.
I'm sure she doesn't have her hopes up too high. I mean, she's been down this road before, hasn't she?
Right. So unfortunately, the Providence School District has to provide these services by law. So if they are not able to do so, which they say they can't because of the staffing shortage, they have to pay to send you elsewhere. So they tried to pay to send Juju to a private special ed preschool in Providence back in January. But when Junie Fed, the mom, and Juju showed up on his first day, she says they were turned away at the door, even though they had been evaluated and been told they could go there. And then she later was told, look, we just can't meet his needs. He needs one-on-one support. So
I want to shift gears to CD1 in a second because Ted has a little bit of news to talk about. But before I do that, watching your report, it's the law we keep citing here is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, and it's a federal law requiring all these services. You asked the commissioner if the city is violating the law, and right away I thought, wow, this could be a federal civil rights violation. In fact, AG Nerona told Kim Kalunian on 12 News at 4 that he does not want to have to defend this one in court, and that is never a good sign when your lawyer says on television that this is a tough case and it looks bad.
And again, that's because the state controls the Providence schools. That's why AG Nerona would be maybe defending it.
Maybe defending it or outsourcing it possibly. I mean, is it possible the feds could be looking into this one, Eli? We've seen that before.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we reached out to the Department of Education, and they said they would be following up on the issues raised in our report. So already they're clued in. They mentioned, it's the responsibility of the state to make sure that school districts are complying with the IDEA or IDEA, the federal law. And, I think this is an interesting case because the state that they're reaching out to ensure that the local school district is complying is the, in effect, school district itself, because Rhode Island Education Department took over Providence Public Schools in 2019.
You have to wonder if the feds are giving them a little time to see if they're going to figure this one out, shot across the bow, and we'll see where it stands.
I think the most important thing is that this could be, this is an emerging crisis in Providence. The commissioner of the Department of Education says that it's likely other school districts are going to start seeing this as well in other parts of the state. So stay tuned because it may be a growing problem.
All right, we are going to shift gears to CD1. So this is a Newsmakers version of breaking news.
Yeah,
I guess.
exactly.
I mean, again, most people are watching this on Sunday, but right before walking into the studio, Ted, we learned a little news about Speaker Shekarchi and his interest in a congressional.
Yeah, my phone's been blowing up as we sit here taping on Friday morning. House Speaker Joe Shekarchi will not be running in the first congressional district race. He's just announced that in a statement saying, quote, "It is an honor to know so many people have confidence that I could help get things done in Washington, just as we've done at the State House. At this time, however, I believe I can do more to help our state by continuing in my role as Speaker. This decision is not a political one, but a deeply personal decision. After discussions with my family, close friends, and House colleagues, I remain ever grateful for the opportunity to serve as Speaker, a job I truly love." So that is another domino falling this week, because we had earlier in the week the announcement that Sabina Matos, the Lieutenant Governor, will run for this seat. Now we know Speaker Shekarchi is out. And I'm being told by people close to Helena Foulkes that she will announce her decision early next week. So those are the three biggest name Democrats. You just heard in the first half, James Diossa, whose partner is Sandra Cano, the state senator, she sounds like she's very likely to run. And so I think if Helena Foulkes doesn't get in, you could see quite a few people decide this seat looks pretty open because Sabina Matos is starting with no real fundraising advantage. So that's going to be very interesting to see.
Yeah, I wondered if the Shekarchi announcement sort of breaks the dam a little bit. As you say, all eyes now shift to Helena Foulkes and what she's going to do because she's the heavy when it comes to money, which with such a compressed timeline in terms of when the primary is going to fall, it is all about money and how quickly you can either independently fund a campaign or fundraise.
Yeah, and we should distinguish between the speaker and Helena Foulkes. She did have a good run for governor last year, but she's never been elected to anything. She's better known because of her run for governor, and she can raise a lot of money. The speaker, on the other hand, because of his current position, had pretty much frozen all institutional support in the Rhode Island Democratic Party as everyone waited to find out whether he would get in or not. Now, the unions, the progressive groups, all the people who said, well, Speaker, if you get in, I'll be with you, but had to wait for his decision, they can all start to push other people and decide who they're going to get behind. So I think you could have a lot of fallout from this.
All right, as you said, let me just play this quick sound with Lieutenant Governor Sabina Matos. She decided she was going to run, and our Alexandra Leslie caught up with her at an event. Take a listen.
I have been in elected office, public service for more than 12 years now, and I believe that my experience at the local, at the state level, can be very beneficial going to Washington to represent Rhode Island.
This is Lieutenant Governor Sabina Matos. She has thrown her hat into the ring. Eli, thoughts?
Just thinking, a free-for-all could be very interesting, and the Democratic primary is so important in this race in particular, unlike CD2, where it's a little bit more Republican-leaning. It is a little more purple. It's much more Democratic in CD1, and so we'll see. It will be interesting if there are so many people running in that primary. You could get by with just a little bit of the vote and possibly find yourself in Washington.
And I'm super interested to see how much the voters are going to care about the candidates who do not live in CD1, like Sabina Matos, who lives in CD2 in Olneyville and Providence.
Oh, that's right.
We know with Seth Magaziner, he didn't live in CD2. When he ran, he did move there before the election, so he could vote for himself. But if he hadn't moved, who knows if it would have been a bigger issue. That was a different situation. The Democrats were very worried about losing that seat, and they just wanted to coalesce around whoever was most likely to win it against the Republicans. I don't know that that's the same situation with CD1. They're not worried about Republicans. So will, Pawtucket, East Providence leaders coalesce around someone that lives in the district that they feel more represents the district?
And I'll go a step further than Steph. The Democrats are not worried about keeping this seat right now. We don't have any announced Republican candidates. I can't say there are any Republicans being discussed who scare the Democrats. And so I think you could say we've seen this more and more in very blue districts like the 1st District in other states where because there's no real threat that the party will lose barring very unusual circumstances, everybody gets in and they all attack each other like it's a general election. What was much more unusual was last year's election where, it was amazing watching all the other 2nd District Democrats hold their punches month after month so Seth Magaziner could just waltz in and get more than 50% in a big field. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see, again, especially if Foulkes doesn't get in, Katie bar the door. I think you could have just a parade of people coming into this race.
All right. Well, and do you think she'd get grief for being just over in Olneyville?
I don't know.
I'm asking the Providence beat reporter.
I don't know, and I genuinely am curious because she does have a base of support in Providence.
Yeah.
But is it on the east side where most of CD1 voters are located in Providence? She has won elections, of course, in part of the city that is in CD2.
Well, and Seth Magaziner's team, of course, always gets a little annoyed by this because they're like, wait a minute, he was representing the 2nd District at the time because he was a statewide official. Now, Sabina Matos does now, but of course, she's only just won her first election. She was appointed previously, so a little different
and
from
I'll
Magaziner.
very quickly say that if Helena Foulkes gets in, she's apparently moving back to the east side where she lived previously, so it'll be a battle for that part of the city.
Yeah.
And unlike Seth Magaziner, correct me if I'm wrong, Helena Foulkes just so happened to be purchasing the East Side home prior to David Cicilline announcing that he was going to step down.
And look, I mean, Seth Magaziner had never been a 2nd District person, right? He was an East Sider, and before that he grew up in Bristol. I mean, he was not, whereas Helena Folks, her family is a longtime East Side family. It's not really a stretch for her to argue she has connection to the 1st District.
Eli, do you think in 60 seconds you can summarize the Medicaid story you've been working on? Because that's how much time we have left in this program.
I can try. Big date coming up beginning April 1st. The state, under a federal mandate, must start removing people who are not qualified to be on Medicaid. They're currently estimating that'll affect at least 25 to 30,000 Rhode Islanders who will have to either find health insurance somewhere else or maybe at this point they've been covered by an employer. But for the last 3 years, they haven't had to go through this process, so it's going to create quite a stir, I would say.
And point out, you said at least 25,000. That
could be more.
Could be more, and we'll see. It is a complicated issue, but it is an important one, and Eli really walks you through it. Make sure you go to WPRI.com to the Target 12 page.
1 in 3 Rhode Islanders are on Medicaid. I think people are always surprised when they hear that statistic.
Yeah, 350-ish thousand, is that what you said?
Yeah, it moves around, but it's somewhere around 350,000.
All right, well, it's an important story, so make sure you check that out and see if you have to do anything on that. Again, it's on WPRI.com. Eli Sherman, Steph Machado, Ted Nisi, thank you for wearing green on this St. Patrick's Day. I'm proud of all of you. If you missed any of it, it's on WPRI.com. I'm Tim White. We'll see you next week on Newsmakers.